All right. Welcome back to the Biohacker Babes podcast, Ben. It's so great to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me back. I can't believe it's been 4 years since I've been on your amazing show. So thank you, Renee and Lauren, for having me back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
insane.
crazy. Yeah, it's hard to believe we've even had the podcast that long, but yeah, actually almost 6 years. So if anyone missed
Amazing.
that episode, it was episode 101, about 4 years ago. We'll link to that in the show notes. Yeah, here we are almost at 300. So
Wow.
definitely check that out because we talked a lot about your previous book, Keto Flex, and about fat adaptation. But now your new book is coming out, and we're so excited to get our hands on it. Metabolic Freedom, which the title is just phenomenal. And I know your podcast is now Metabolic Freedom. I think like people talk about financial freedom and what is that and how do we get that? But in the health space, like what a cool idea. Like, how do we get this freedom? So I want to hear your definition on metabolic freedom at some point. But to kick us off, I think there's still a lot of confusion around this topic. And metabolic flexibility is thrown around, but how do people really know if this is a problem for them? Like, other than, lab testing that typically misses it with fasting glucose or A1C, how can we feel in our body? Like, what is a sign or symptom that we are not metabolically flexible or fat adapted and then experiencing metabolic freedom?
It's a great question because you're right. We could do lab testing and all that is a great idea, but the signs and symptoms will show up way before the lab work changes. And as a matter of fact, you could feel a lot of symptoms and look perfectly fine on the blood report. Your body hasn't caught up yet to those symptoms. So the symptoms are a gift. They're not a problem. They're your body's way of communicating to you that, hey, look, something you're eating, something in your environment, maybe something you're thinking is causing you to go out of homeostasis, the way that the body was designed to thrive. So I will show you a symptom, a check engine light to bring you back to homeostasis. Unfortunately, most people look at the symptom as something to mask or medicate or maybe have a surgery to remove. But the symptom is a gift. We should be thankful and grateful that we have this mechanism in place to show us something is off. So the symptoms will be really subtle at first. It'll be maybe afternoon fatigue, some brain fog. You walk into the kitchen and you forget why you walked in there, and it takes you some time to remember. But then it starts to show up in the form of more severe symptoms. And that could be okay, you're starting to gain weight, 5 pounds all of a sudden, 20 pounds, 30 pounds. You have all this belly fat. That's a symptom. Being overweight is a weight symptom, not a weight problem. Uh, Digestion is a big issue, meaning poor digestion, where you eat a meal and maybe you feel puffy and bloated, you feel fatigue, you get acid reflux. These are symptoms as well that your metabolism is not functioning well. And of course, the energy issues is something that's very, very common. People are relying on stimulants and toxic 5 hour energy drinks, and maybe just they're over caffeinated because their metabolism is not taking food and converting it into energy as efficiently. So they have caffeine. They drink these toxic energy drinks to keep up with that. So these are the most common symptoms. Now, as it gets more severe in terms of like insulin resistance and diabetes, which is primarily the people that I deal with, it starts to show up in really interesting forms. Skin tags are a form of insulin resistance. It's insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia means growth, 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 and your body will develop skin tags, which typically are found around the eyelids, the neck, the back. That's a sign of insulin resistance, being a sugar burner. Brown patches around your armpit area and neck, also a sign of being a sugar burner, insulin resistance. And of course, just looking at your stomach, and if you have excess belly fat, that's a sign of insulin resistance and being a sugar burner. And it's important to catch these symptoms now versus 5 years from now, 20 years from now, because if we don't do something about it now, it leads to major, major diseases out there: cancer, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions. So we want to pay attention to those symptoms and look at them as a gift, not something we should mask or something we should hate.
Hmm.
Mm.
It's a
Can you
gift. I
like
love
what
that.
a novel approach? Can you imagine if our doctor when we were children was like, I'm going to give you this tool. You're going to listen to your symptoms. But we're not. We're taught the opposite of that. It's like symptom, let's shut it down. Also in terms of, I'm guilty of this too when I see like the check engine light in my car. I'm like, oh, how much longer can I go? I'm going to
Oh
squeeze out another
no.
couple of weeks before I get my oil change. Like we all do it because we don't have time to
Yeah.
address the symptoms. But I think what you're going to share today is if we have this metabolic freedom, it doesn't have to be another checklist of things that is difficult and busy and can sort of like take over our mind space, right? So I'm
Abs-
curious for you to explain like how this actually could be like a much easier way of living for all of us.
yes, and I'm also guilty of the check engine light turning on in the car. As a matter of fact, right now my car says I need an oil change for 2 weeks. I haven't gotten an oil change, right? I'm
Uh-oh. We
guilty
all do
too.
it. We all do it.
I mean, if
So
I
yeah,
didn't have my husband, my car would probably just be dead by now. So
there you
grateful for
go.
that.
Something to be grateful for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Metabolic freedom is exactly what you just said, Lauren. It's not really about adding all these things and having a checklist and making it complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. I think the old adage of weight loss and fat loss makes it a little bit more complicated, meaning the way that it was taught to me is that it's all about calories in versus calories out. Measure your food, count your calories, and get into a deficit. And that's really a struggle because you rely on willpower and discipline. That's not going to last, right? Metabolic freedom means you remove things first and foremost. It's really the interference. In the first half of the book, metabolic, I just got the author copy so I could hold it up finally. The first,
Beautiful.
yeah, I get to smell the book. The first half is all about
Awesome.
the causes. All right. This is what leads to metabolic disease, metabolic dysfunction. First, we need to remove the interference. Once we do that, then this innate intelligence, the inner physician within the body goes to heal itself. So it's really about removing before you add things on. I'll give you an example. Snacking and grazing. That's a huge cause towards insulin resistance, weight gain, and eventually metabolic diseases. And we don't think that. We were taught that, okay, you need to snack and graze, eat every 2 to 3 hours, right?
Keep
Yeah,
it
be a
going.
grazer, keep the
Yeah.
metabolism revved up. When I started to research, really dig into the research on metabolism, I found out that we don't necessarily even want to speed up the metabolism because animals in the wildlife that have the fastest metabolism have the shortest lifespan. It's not about speeding up the metabolism. The metabolism is not even necessarily running in speeds. It's either efficient or it's inefficient. So when you have a metabolism that's stuck burning sugar and glucose, like 93% of Americans, is inefficient. It's not going to take food and turn it into energy. It's going to turn that into fat storage and you're going to deplete your energy level. So snacking and grazing is the first thing. If you're eating like the average American, 300 grams of carbs per day and eating in between those meals, we want to lower the carbs to lower our glucose and insulin spikes, and we want to eliminate the snacks. Like that's a good start right there. And when you replace your carbs with protein and fat, it makes a lot easier to go in between meals without snacking and grazing. I will say one more thing here with the insulin piece. Chapter 2 of the book talks about why insulin is the piece to pay attention to, because the research shows you could have full-blown insulin resistance, meaning hyperinsulinemia, for on average 6 to 14 years without your fasting blood sugar levels changing, without your A1C changing at all, because your pancreas is so busy producing massive amounts of insulin to clear that excess glucose until those receptor sites for insulin go deaf to the screams. Now, all of a sudden, 6 to 14 years later, there is a dramatic increase in the blood sugar, and then it's a problem. Then you're diagnosed with prediabetes or even full on diabetes. And once you're diagnosed with diabetes, it opens up a whole world of metabolic diseases you don't want to be a part of: cancer, heart disease, kidney failures, infections, amputations. It's even pretty rare to die from diabetes. It doesn't really happen. It's what the diabetes leads to. But if you catch it with the insulin, you're going to be what Einstein called a genius. He said, Intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them." So I make the case for a blood test, a fasting insulin blood test. You want to see that in the single digits. You want to see it between 3 and 6. That means you have sensitive levels of insulin. And if you could get your fasting insulin between 3 and 6, you're going to have more energy. You're going to burn fat. You're going to extend your lifespan. You're going to prevent a lot of these metabolic diseases.
Mm.
Hmm.
I'm so glad you said that. So actually my recent fasting insulin was 3. So I'm really happy to hear that. Yes.
That's
Because
amazing.
yeah, celebrate. So you're saying like even if because a lot of people are wearing CGMs now, do you find like someone could be wearing a CGM and that looks totally normal, but the fasting insulin could still be elevated?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So with the CGM, and I love a continuous glucose monitor, when you're looking at a fasting glucose with the CGM, that could look perfect, meaning between 70 and 90 milligrams per deciliter, even though you have full-blown insulin resistance. So there's a study called the Whitehall Study 2 that showed that it takes 6 to 14 years until the fasting blood sugars change. But what you can look at with a continuous glucose monitor is postprandial glucose, and that will give you a sign or a clue to see if you're insulin resistant. So if you, let's say you tested your fasting glucose and it was 85 milligrams per deciliter with a CGM, and then you ate a meal, 2 hours later, if you have a healthy amount of or a sensitive insulin levels like you, Renee, at 3, your glucose should go back to that baseline in this scenario, 85 2 hours after eating. But if you have insulin resistance, it'll be elevated 2 hours after eating, and a CGM will catch that. It won't necessarily catch a fasting glucose. And even
Hmm.
an A1C, which is the 3 month average of your blood sugars, won't really change, even though you might have full blown insulin resistance. So, for sure, get a fasting glucose, get an A1C, but even more important than that, get a fasting insulin. And what's crazy about the fasting insulin test, number one, most conventional doctors don't even order it because there's no medication they will prescribe for high insulin. And then number two, even if you do get it ordered, the reference range, as you just saw, Renee, with your test, is between 3 and 25 or 3 and 28. Meaning, if it's 17 fasting glucose or 21 or 11, it won't be flagged as being a problem, but that is insulin resistance. You want it between 3 and 6. So you want to make sure you look at it from a functional lens, not a standard reference range.
Such
Right.
a
Yeah.
simple, actionable, just adding that one marker because I can't tell you how many clients have come and said, well, I wore a CGM and everything looks good. Well, one, you just proved a point that it could look fine and there still be insulin resistance, but also most people are not seeing their average glucose numbers 75 to 90. Most people these days, at least what I'm seeing, are well over 100.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
already into that spectrum of we're on our way towards pre-diabetes, if not diabetes. So just more evidence to prevent. So
Can I
what
add
is the
something about glucose real quick? I had a
yeah.
client that it was 99 and their doctor said, "Oh, it's under 100, so you're okay." It was
It's
one
not
point.
static though. The thing is it's
It's
not
not
static.
static.
Our bodies are
I know.
dynamic. Like where is it going tomorrow and the
Yeah.
next day and next year?
Exactly.
Yeah. I was like, I can't believe this. Okay. Sorry. I had to throw that
Yeah,
in.
it happens all the
Yeah.
time. So thank you for that simple
Yeah.
actionable of testing fasting insulin. So you already mentioned like kind of removing the boundaries, right? Like the body is designed to heal, it's designed to thrive, it's designed to detox if we can get rid of the stuff that's getting in the way. So what are some of the few first steps in removing maybe those stressors that could be impairing our metabolic health?
Yeah, the first step is the carbohydrates. And I'm not against having carbohydrates. I just think the 93% of Americans that are metabolically unhealthy, and that's a 2022 study. It's not just a stat I'm making up. 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
They're essentially in what I call a keto deficiency. They're stuck
Hmm.
burning sugar from carbohydrates. So
Hmm.
they really need to lower their carbohydrate intake. They need to increase their proteins and fats, eliminate the snacking in between meals. Even if it's a healthy snack, it raises glucose and insulin, it starts the digestive processes, and it takes energy away from your day to day activity to deal with digestion. So the first step is to gradually lower your carbohydrate intake, eliminate the snacks, and increase healthy fats, healthy proteins. The second step is to fix your sleep and circadian rhythm. I have a whole chapter, and I know y'all talk a lot about this, and we have our mutual friend Molly Eastman, who's the queen of this. And I have a whole chapter on how a circadian rhythm mismatch with your hormones leads to metabolic disease and dysfunction. And I know it's not sexy to talk about sleep, unfortunately, unless it's us talking about
We
sleep. But
think
from
it
a,
is.
yeah,
I love
we
it. It's
think
my
it is.
favorite. It's my
Yeah,
favorite. Yeah.
I agree. But people like to hear about like what's your favorite supplements and biohacks, but sleep is
Nah.
foundational, right? Yeah, I know. But
Yeah.
studies after studies show, like if you get poor sleep, even in healthy individuals, after a few days, it will mimic prediabetes. You'll have for men lower testosterone levels. You'll have brain fog. Your hunger hormone, ghrelin, will start to increase. Your satiety, fat burning hormone, leptin, starts to decrease, and it's just this vicious cycle of the exact opposite. So we want to fix our sleep. We want to avoid eating too close to bed. avoid artificial light too close to bed, stimulation too close to bed. We want to optimize our sleep and track our sleep. I know that we're all trackers here, and I aim to get around an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours of deep and REM sleep each night. And I feel really great if I do that. So it's really cool because you could start to biohack your sleep without spending too much time in bed, meaning it's not necessarily about the quantity, the hours in bed, it's about the quality. If you're really busy, there's ways you could biohack your sleep to get enough deep and REM sleep, even though you're spending a little bit less time in bed. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years, working with several clients used to think they were doing something right. If their goal was to lose weight, to burn fat, so they would sacrifice sleep, let's say an hour and a half, to go to the gym and work out, whether it was a CrossFit workout, Orange Theory. They thought they were doing something right. I'm going to be so disciplined. I'm going to sign up for a gym membership. I'm going to take an hour and a half off of my sleep to wake up and do that 6 a.m. class. And they're doing it backwards, right? I actually told them, no, no, no. Instead of doing that, get that hour and a half of sleep. Don't work out right now. Let's fix that first, and then we could add some exercise snacks throughout the day. And that actually helped with the weight loss, help with the fatigue and inflammation. So sleep is foundational. We want to make sure we're getting quality sleep. So I would start there, lowering carbs, increasing protein and fat, fixing the sleep. It's a good couple of first steps.
Oh yeah. Love the sleep topic. I personally noticed the biggest takeaway from wearing a CGM was the impact of sleep. Because yeah, like my numbers typically look really good, but if I didn't get enough good quality sleep, the next day my glucose is on that roller coaster. I'm like, where are the carbs? Where are the caffeine, the sugar, all the stuff that I don't typically crave. So yeah, sleep's definitely got to be at the top of the list.
Same.
Yeah. What else with maybe like environmental toxins would
Yeah.
you say? Like these obesogens, these endocrine disrupting chemicals? Because like I always think back to like what did our ancestors do? Like I don't think they were talking about weight loss. I think it was just like a natural way of living. But now in today's world, we can't just eat and exercise and call it a day. Like we have to look at all these other things, sleep, circadian rhythm, but the chemicals in our environment. So what role do you see all of that playing and what can we do to start to minimize that exposure?
I actually think it's the number one cause of metabolic dysfunction and disease these days because of the
Wow.
amount of toxins that we're dealing with. To your point, Renee, our ancestors didn't deal with glyphosate and high fructose corn syrup and rancid fats and of course the obesogens, the different microplastics we're dealing with. We live in a very toxic world, unfortunately. These toxins are everywhere. We cannot escape them. That's the bad news. But we can do some things to open up our detox pathways to remove them. There are two. So chapter 5 is all about these environmental toxins, how it leads to weight gain and inflammation and disease. There are two toxins that I outline in chapter 5. So the obesogens, as you referenced, these are toxins that enter the body and create obesity. And the reason why this happens is because the number one priority for the human body is survival. The innate intelligence wants to survive. It will do everything in the short term to survive, even if that means developing disease later on. In the short term, it wants to survive. So when these toxins enter the body through our food supply, water supply, heck, just walking outside, and then there's other exposures. When these toxins enter the body wants to survive. So it activates a pathway called PPAR gamma. PPAR gamma takes those toxins out of the bloodstream because the body does not want these toxins freely circulating in the bloodstream, entering vital organs and killing us. So it activates PPAR gamma, which is very interesting because PPAR gamma acts similar to insulin. Insulin shuttles the glucose out of the blood and puts it into the cells. Well, PPAR gamma shuttles the toxins out of cells and puts it into our fat cells. These toxins are called lipophilic. They're fat-loving toxins. It loves our fat cells. So when they're shuttled into the fat cells, because there's a lot of room in our adipocytes, and if there's not room in our fat cells, the body will literally increase the size of the fat cells for those toxins to go into. And if it runs out of room, it will create new fat cells. These are how these toxins create obesity. They're called obesogens. And here's what happens. If we have a lot of toxins in our fat cells and we start to exercise and start to calorie deficit, like a lot of people do, we start to burn the body fat, yes, Then we dump these toxins because that's where they're housed. And then we reabsorb them. And then the innate intelligence thinks, whoa, every time we burn fat, we dump toxins. I'm going to stop burning fat. And then it creates weight loss resistance. So we try to cut our calories more, exercise more, and it doesn't work. We need to remove these toxins. So that's one classification of toxins. And I'll outline some simple swaps we can do. But there's a second classification called diabetogens. And this is a new classification of toxins that just entered the literature in the last few years. These are specific super toxins that have the ability to disrupt the beta cell function in our pancreas, which produces insulin, it triggers prediabetes and in some cases full-blown diabetes. There's actually studies showing around 33% of diabetes cases in the US is strictly from these toxins, 33%. So it's a problem. We want to start with simple things we can do. Number one, the plastics, the microplastics. It's getting all over the news, which is great. Simple. I mean, these plastics, first of all, the average American eats a credit card size worth of plastic every week, according to the University of Newcastle study.
I
5
hope
grams.
I'm holding down that average. I hope.
Me too.
Yeah. I think we're below that. We're below that, right? 5 grams. And they're finding these microplastics. Men, they're finding it in your testicles. They're also finding it in our brains, our arteries. We're turning into plastic people, essentially. They're everywhere. So we find these microplastics in, of course, plastic water bottles, which are one of the top exposures. So we want to use glass, like I'm holding up here, glass water bottles as much as possible. Plastic Tupperware is a big problem, especially when you heat it and store food with fat in the plastic Tupperware. Those microplastics leach into the food. So we want to swap with glass Tupperware. Plastic cutting board. People don't realize that plastic cutting board leaches a whole bunch of microplastics into the food. We want to swap that with wooden cutting boards. And even something as simple
even wooden is covered with plastic sometimes too, though. Just extra little challenge there.
I think it needs to be a certain type of wood, right?
There's a handful of them out there that don't have the plastic sealant.
The plastic coating, to Lauren's point. Yeah.
So you got to do your research.
That's how crazy, right? It's like everywhere, right? Even tea bags, right? We are finding a whole bunch of microplastics in tea bags as well. And then there are some simple swaps, meaning like simple things you can do, like cash register receipts have been shown to contain 1,000 times more BPA than canned food, right? So we could say no to cash register receipts. I see a lot of women grab the cash register receipts and they put it in their bra. They store it in their bra. I see that all the time at Whole Foods. Yeah. They're in a rush. They put it in their mouth and then put it in their bra. I see it all the time. It's crazy. Yeah. I know. So say no to cash register receipts and then keep the detox pathways open, right? Movement is a great way, sweating, sauna, binders. I talk a little bit about this in the book. Keep the detox pathways open. Our downstream detox pathways are the lymphatic system, the gut microbiome, the kidney, the liver, and the gut. So find ways to support those 5 downstream detox pathways, and you'll start to eliminate these toxins. They're a big, big problem.
Okay.
I was thinking, I just made a video this morning jumping on the trampoline. I was like, isn't it weird that what we do to heal as an adult is just stuff we did as a kid? Like, why did we ever stop doing this stuff? But we stop moving and we get congested and then these toxins just pile up. So yeah, just like increasing the health of your plumbing can help immensely with this stuff.
I love it. Yeah. All the things we did as kids, jumping up and down, trampoline jumping, all that helps. I love that you made a video about that.
Yeah. Playing with friends, all of that.
Being outside.
Play in general, being outside. Yeah. Something that I see a lot with clients, they come in and we start to talk about getting fat adapted and maybe talk about using a CGM or a keto mojo and maybe entertaining some fasting. And they go, oh, I did that before and it didn't work for me. And I think this is where the conversation of the toxins come in, because if your cell is toxic and inflamed, if your mitochondria cannot burn fat, because that's where we do oxidize the fat for energy, then of course we're not going to be successful. And I think you really have laid it out really nicely, but can you just speak a little bit to how the mitochondria works? And if that cell is not healthy, that this process is probably not going to go efficiently.
You said it. That's where the body burns fat, the mitochondria, right? We produce energy. The mitochondria are responsible for over 90% of the entire body's energy production. And what's interesting about the mitochondria interesting facts that I put into the book. We get all of our mitochondria from our mother. So the health of our mom could give you some clues to the health of you. We get it all from the mom.
Thanks,
Uh,
Mom.
thanks, mom. The mitochondria use two main fuel supplies, amino acids, and of course, it could use fat. It loves using fat and ketones. The most powerful antioxidants for the mitochondria specifically are glutathione and melatonin, right? Melatonin, we think of like just for sleep. It's way, way more than that. So when these toxins are in our body, we deplete the mitochondria. I mean, not just the toxins, but high fructose corn syrup, rancid fats like processed seed oils, these deplete the mitochondria. And you could make all these changes, but if you have a high toxic load, to your point, Lauren, you're going to say keto didn't work for me, fasting didn't work for me, or whatever it is, but you didn't go upstream to address what has destroyed the mitochondria. If you have a lot of stress in your life, and when I say the word stress, I'm referring to three areas of stress: mental, emotional stress, physical, and then, of course, the chemical, which is the toxicity piece we're talking about. When your stress bucket is high, the mitochondria go on full alert. The mitochondria, they're not just mindless energy factories, they also have an intelligence where it's like a surveillance system for threats and stressors. So if there's a lot of stress, it will intentionally lower energy production to deal with the threat. It goes into what's called the cell danger response. Dr. Robert Navio calls it the wartime metabolism. And it does this very strategically. And it needs, because it takes a lot of energy to produce energy. So it needs to lower energy demands to deal with the threat. So I'll give you an example. When you're sick, this is what happens, whether it's COVID or whatever else it is. When you get sick, you feel tired because you lower energy production to deal with the threat. And then when the threat goes away, you're supposed to get that energy back on demand, right? But sometimes people get locked into the cell danger response. And a lot of the times it's these toxins. They're inflaming the mitochondria. They're depleting those two really important antioxidants, glutathione and melatonin. So yes, you could supplement with glutathione and melatonin, great idea, but it's important to remove the interference first and foremost.
Yeah.
And protect the body's natural endogenous production. We make it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's always the best idea.
So do you ever supplement with melatonin? Because I feel like there's still a big debate. We have people like Dr. John Lawrence talking about 200 milligrams of melatonin. Other people like Deanna Minnick say zero point 0.3 milligrams. And then there's like the don't touch melatonin camp. What do you think? If someone truly has sick mitochondria, would you ever bring that in as a supplement?
Yeah, yeah, I will. So Dr. John Lawrence, who's a great friend of mine, wrote a section in the book about melatonin. That's how important I thought it was. I asked him to
Oh,
write a piece about it.
awesome. Cool.
Chapter 11. Yeah, chapter 11 is where he wrote that piece. And I've interviewed Deanna Minnick as well, and I've heard her thoughts, and I've interviewed other people as well. With melatonin, here's what I know. There's no negative feedback loop with melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone, yes, an antioxidant, yes. But unlike other hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, if you take other hormones exogenously, your body stops producing it as much because there is what's called this negative feedback loop. With melatonin, there's no such thing. Even at high doses, there's not one study that I've ever found, and I've asked a lot of experts in this field, if there's ever a study they've seen on humans that show when you take melatonin, you stop producing it. Not one. I've looked for it. I don't know if y'all have seen any of those. Have you? One
No,
study? No,
I
I don't think it's
haven't.
out there.
Haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where
So
that came from.
yeah, I think it's great. I love melatonin. I use it. I use at high doses as well, 200 milligrams, 300 milligrams. But even knowing that there's no negative feedback loop, I still use it. I use it cyclically. I don't
Sure.
use it every day. I use
Right.
it when I travel. I use it very strategically. I love it. It's a great way to buffer stress. It's actually, I make the case in the book that it's a wonderful way to increase your hormetic ceiling. And I talk about hormesis and how stress could be beneficial when you adapt to it. And a lot of people in our biohacking space, they do a cold plunge or a sauna or a different biohack like red light, and they feel awful because their hormetic ceiling is very low. They need to
Mhm.
increase that to adapt to the stress. So I talk about melatonin being one of the best ways to improve your heart rate variability, improve your hormetic ceiling. So I'm a big fan of melatonin supplementation. I think a lot of people who have a lot of oxidative stress and a low hormetic ceiling really need melatonin as a tool.
Thank
Great.
you for
Yeah.
breaking that down because I think there's still a lot of misunderstanding about that. People say I tried melatonin, it didn't work.
Yeah.
So we got to reset and understand these foundational pathways and what's going on upstream again. So essential. I'm curious to know more about what you're kind of talking about in terms of fats these days, incorporating healthy fats. I know you're a fan of like the 2 tablespoons of a couple different varieties of fats.
Yeah.
How would you like to introduce that to people? Where do we start?
Yeah, speaking of the cell membrane and the mitochondrial membrane, these fats they make up that cell membrane. The cell membrane is where the intelligence of the cell is. It's not the DNA. The cell membrane controls the DNA. So if you have unhealthy cell membranes, you're going to have inflammation, weight gain, disease, essentially. It'll trigger bad genes. So the fats make it up. And in the book, chapter 4, I talk about these fats creating a process called lipid membrane reorganization, where studies are showing that when you eat these fats, they make up your cell membranes in a matter of hours. Like you literally are what you eat in a matter of hours.
Mm,
Crazy. So the
yeah.
first thing you want to do is remove the bad fats. And I know that with the Maha movement and just the whole discussion on metabolic health, there's a conversation being had about these seed oils, and we've been talking about them for a long time, haven't we? But it's cool to see it become mainstream. But with it becoming mainstream, there's a lot of confusion with seed oils. Here's the thing: when we talk about seed oils and them being bad for you, I am referring to the processed seed oils. It's the processed seed oils that are bad for you. I think organic cold pressed seed oils from a quality source could be absolutely healthy for you when it's not heated and you use it the right way, like phosphatidylcholine and organic cold pressed pumpkin seed oil. Like there's definitely benefits there, but the majority of all the seed oils out there are not that. It's the processed seed oils, and those are highly inflammatory. Dr. Martin Grutfeld, I got this study from Dr. Kate Shanahan and her great work. Dr. Martin Grutfeld has a study showing that vegetable oils, or excuse me, French fries cooked in vegetable oils, produce the same amount of aldehydes as a tobacco cigarette. So essentially, one French fry he showed in his study is one tobacco cigarette smoked. And these bad fats,
Oh.
the vegetable oils, they incorporate into the cell membrane, and studies show that it's there for years. The half-life is
Mm.
680 days, 2 years. If you stopped eating them today, 2 years later, half of them is in your body fat, creating inflammation. So the first step is to remove them. I'll give your audience a list of the 8 you want to remove. We have canola, corn, cottonseed oil, soybean, safflower, and sunflower oil, rice bran, and grapeseed oil. Those are 8 fats to remove. Do an audit, remove them. Replace them with healthy fats, saturated fats, monounsaturated fats. So this is going to be, if we're talking about saturated fats, coconut oil, butter, ghee, beef tallow, duck fat. And then, of course, the monounsaturated fats are going to be olive oil and avocado oil. So that simple swap right there, you start to replace the damaged fats in your cell membranes with the healthy fats, and you'll start to feel better. And you'll notice a difference in a matter of days just doing that.
Mm.
Mm. The
Great
French fries
list.
stat is like people, you can't forget that. Once you learn that, that's it. You don't look at French fries the same anymore.
No.
I know.
And
And
we
you
were in
used to love French fries, right?
I
Wasn't
used
that
to
like one of your
love
favorite
French
foods?
fries, but I don't eat them anymore. But we were in
Yeah.
Austin this weekend and we told you at HOS and we went to the well and the well is
I
like,
love that place. No seed
yeah,
oils.
no seed oils. And
It's amazing.
I don't even know, they weren't even real fries, but I ordered steak free. They came out, were they like, do you remember
Yucca?
what they? Yucca
Yucca?
fries?
Yucca
Oh,
fries?
yuca fries. Yum. So
Yucca.
Yucca
cassava.
fries
Yeah.
and coconut, and good oil. So I was like, I can
Oh,
have a fry.
oh, so
I don't know
good.
what my blood sugar did, but they were delicious.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. We did a passeggiata. We walked after. Don't worry.
There you go. You do it the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Question about the oils. I remember when I heard you speak like 4 or 5 years ago, you shared a really interesting study about olive oil actually being okay for heating due to the
Yeah.
high antioxidant and polyphenol levels. Are you still in that camp of olive oil is okay to cook with?
Yes. Yeah. You remember. Good job. That was like
It's
5 years ago.
Because I
And
love
so
olive oil. I was like, yes, I
She's
can
got that
cook with
memory.
it. I can cook with it.
you're correct. It needs to be a high quality olive oil, which I'm sure you use. But yes, if it's the organic extra virgin olive oil, it is true. Although there's a low smoke point, there was a really interesting study from New Zealand that looked at eight of the most popular cooking oils, and olive oil was included. It looked at the smoke point. They also did two trials. One trial where they cooked the food in 464 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very high temperature. The other food was around 350 degrees Fahrenheit, but for 5 hours they deep fried it. Then they looked at the polar compounds that were produced. Arguably, that's the most important thing to pay attention to because the more polar compounds produced from heating a fat, the more inflammatory it is. And olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, actually scored the best, even though it had a low smoke point, lower than most of the oils out there. The oils that scored the highest amount of polar compounds, obviously, were the vegetable oils that I mentioned earlier. So, yes, you could use it at high temperatures if it's a high quality. And the reason why is because it's filled with antioxidants and polyphenols and it protects it from getting damaged.
Okay.
Mm, awesome.
Yes.
Olive oil's back in. Very cool.
Happy
Yes.
to hear that's still the case. Okay.
Yeah, I want to flip the switch back to carbs a little bit because we haven't talked about grains. Now people are all over grains being heart healthy. We got to add them in for fiber. I had a neighbor go see an RD last week and he knew to come back to me because I was like, I want to know what she says. And she told him you have to add a portion of rice to every meal. I'm like, why?
Wow.
Why? Can you talk to us about grains, how they are potentially harming our gut microbiome, which is one where our immune system sits, but also part of our detox pathways? What's your stance on grains?
What crazy advice, huh? Eat
Can
rice,
you
a
believe
serving
that?
of rice with, yeah, I do believe it,
Every
unfortunately.
meal? Not even
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
once a day, like every meal?
Well, I think it was like a lunch and dinner, like get your fiber in, like support your
Yeah.
cardiovascular health.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
the old adage, isn't it?
It's
Amazing.
still happening.
I know. Grains are not healthy for you. I mean, especially the grains in the US. Um,
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
gut microbiome aspect, right? Because that was the question. What is it doing to our gut? Well, grains contain a lot of anti-nutrients, lectins and phytates, and these are inflammatory to the gut to the gut microbiome. It creates a leaky gut, intestinal permeability, especially if you already have leaky gut, which most people do. And grains are also loaded with glyphosate. Glyphosate is mitochondrial poison. It also creates leaky gut. It creates disease. I know Stephanie Seneth, who I actually referenced in the book, MIT researcher, and she has strong research, her and Nancy Swanson, on the application of glyphosate in the US in the late 1980s. And she tracks it with specific diseases and the rise of these diseases. And it tracks exactly the same, like diabetes, Alzheimer's, even
Autism.
autism, and yeah, dementia. They're a problem. So the grains already are anti-nutrients loaded with glyphosate. It's not healthy for you. And that includes oatmeal, by the way. A lot of people think oatmeal is great for fat loss. And people don't understand when I talk about sugar, high levels of blood sugar being a problem, they think they're not having sugar, but they're having the oatmeal and the grains. What they don't get is that that turns into sugar in the body. Every
Mhm.
carbohydrate will turn into sugar inside of your body. So it might not happen as quickly as eating, I don't know, processed sugar, but it will happen after an hour or two. So grains are not good for you. Now, if we go to Italy, it's a different story. Italy have a fraction of the diabetes we have here, a fraction of the obesity. They have a longer lifespan than us, and they've also outlawed glyphosate in 2016. They have strict regulations on red dyes and different artificial ingredients. Their grain and wheat is very different than ours, but in the U.S., it's a different story. I think food is the perfect delivery system for these toxins, and grains are high on the list there. I would put grains, soybeans, I would put corn, and even coffee. Coffee is one of the most sprayed crops in the world. So I love coffee, just want to make sure it's organic and clean.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm actually going to Italy in a couple weeks, so
Ooh,
I'm like, I'd have to indulge a little bit over there.
oh yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's going to be
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah. So would you recommend everyone, as long as you're in the US, is 100% grain free? Like there's never a use case for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have symptoms, avoid it. If you're overweight, avoid it. If you're pretty healthy and lean and you have it from time to time, even in the US, shouldn't be a big deal. But 93% of Americans need to avoid it right now. Yes.
Yeah. And maybe that number is higher because you said that was in 2022.
Yeah.
93%.
Yeah.
It's probably getting worse. So,
It
Yeah.
probably is.
yeah.
There was also another study which really inspired me to write the book from it was from 2016 from Mayo Clinic, and it set out to determine how many Americans live what they consider an active, healthy, and fit lifestyle, and it based it off of four characteristics. So the first criteria was that they don't smoke cigarettes. The second criteria was that they exercise either moderate to vigorous exercise for a total of 150 minutes per week. The third criteria was that they eat what they consider a healthy diet, which is simply a minimally processed diet in this study. And the fourth criteria was that if they're a female, they have a body fat percentage of under 30% and a male under 20%. And the study concluded that only 2.7% of Americans fit those criteria. That's it.
Hmm.
Come on, America.
Oh
Do
my
better.
gosh.
So
That's
bad.
mind-blowing.
And that was 2016.
2%.
It's probably a lot worse right now,
Oh,
unfortunately. That's why, part of
Really,
the
it's
reason why I
worse.
wrote the book. The book, the
yeah.
book was, it's not a niche book. I know that I have the keto books, some fasting books, and some niche books out there. This is not a niche book, although there's information on keto and fasting. It's not a niche book. It's a book written for the masses. It's a book written for the 93% of Americans who are metabolically unhealthy. And for those already in this biohacking space, for you to just understand the metabolism better. There's 275 citations in the book, but I wrote it for the masses. It's a great book for the average person to understand how big pharma, big food has given you the exact opposite information and how to strip the power away from them and give it back to us, the people.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Gosh, you've
need that.
debunked so many myths today, but I think the biggest one is that like metabolic health is health. This is not just about weight loss, right? This is your
Yeah,
health. And
Yeah.
end of story.
that's right. Exactly. And as a matter of fact, nobody even has a weight problem. I talk about this in the book. I used to be obese. I never had a weight problem. It's a weight symptom. You
Hmm.
don't lose weight to get healthy. You get healthy to lose weight. The weight comes off as a side effect as of getting healthy, focusing on hormones and inflammation. And you're gonna like this study. When I dug into metabolism for the book, I mean, I've heard so many people over the years, I'm sure both of you have as well, say the following: "Oh my gosh, ever since I turned 40, my metabolism has slowed down." Or, "Oh my gosh, my metabolism is so slow. I don't know what to do." And they're trying to speed up the metabolism. They're trying to do things to like kickstart it. Well, this comprehensive study from Duke, 8,000 plus people in the study. It's a 2021 study. It took 8,000 people and it measured their metabolism during really sophisticated metrics, but not just a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old. No, the age group in the study was from age 1 all the way to age 80 and everything in between. Okay. And they measured their metabolism. And here's what the study showed. Between the ages 20 and 60, the study said there are no significant changes in the metabolism. Then it went on to say when somebody reaches 60 years old, they see a 0.7% decline in the metabolism every year after age 60. Okay. So somebody watching and listening might think that's a bad thing if they're over age 60 right now, but here's what the study said. The reason why the metabolism started to decline after age 60 was loss of muscle mass.
Hmm.
Meaning,
Ooh.
if you build lean muscle mass before you turn 60 and preserve it, or if you're over 60 and you build lean muscle mass, you could be 84 years old and have the same metabolism as when you were 24 years old. That's how important lean muscle mass is. And I think you both would love that because both of you are super fit and very active.
I love that. I
That's
love that. I
great.
love that. I love it. It's missing
Yeah.
from so many health programs. We have to
Yes,
move heavy things.
that's
So
right.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Stephanie Estima, we heard her talk primarily about perimenopause yesterday at HOS. And it was like all about muscle. And she was like, this is my glute workout. She like gave examples and just like how important muscle and recovery and she gave a couple nutrition tips, but it was really like, ladies, lift heavy stuff. And we
Yeah.
have to lift heavy stuff differently than men. I appreciated she talked about like our anatomy is different. We actually have to lift differently. So she's a rock
She's spot
star.
on. Yeah, I love her. She's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Gabrielle Lyon with her book all about muscle. Like, yeah,
Yep.
it's so, so important. So thank you for sharing that study. That's incredible.
Pretty cool because,
Yeah.
it's not about fast metabolism, slow metabolism. It's about an efficient metabolism, being metabolically free. And lifting weights, strength training, eating high quality protein, maybe taking creatine and essential amino acids. These are great things you can do. The more muscle mass you have, the more insulin sensitive you're going to be, meaning less insulin is produced. That glucose is being shuttled into your muscle cells and liver cells. Less insulin is being produced. It also prevents osteoporosis, osteopenia, bone fractures. You just feel better. So it's always a great idea to lift weights. Yes.
Yeah, it's the best place to store it. It's like I lived in Manhattan, so I always think of like Manhattan mini storage. You like couldn't afford the big one, but I'm like, if you have more muscle, you get the bigger storage.
Oh.
Great analogy.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
So, Ben, something that I love about you, like one, it's amazing how you can just pull these studies left and right. Like you are so well researched. But my favorite thing about you is that you love to talk about emotional wellness and gratitude and joy and how much like the stress component really does support and direct our health expression. I we've heard you talk about this in so many different capacities, but I'm just going to like give you the floor and let you run with this. Like, what do we need to know about our emotional health and our belief system in terms of how our health is expressing?
I love it. Thank you for that acknowledgement. Um, I love talking about this. I'm so glad we're going to get into this right now. Chapter 10 of the book is my favorite chapter in the book. It's all about this. It's all about how your thoughts influence your metabolism, longevity, or disease and weight gain with a single thought. And I get into the nocebo effect, the placebo effect, your self-image, vitamin G. And I start the chapter out with a story that it's a true story. Bob Proctor shared this with me from the 1960s. It was in the newspaper, and it illustrates how powerful your thoughts are. So I'm going to share the story with you right now because I
I'm already
love
crying
it.
because I think I know the story. It's so good.
I love story time. So let's
Okay.
go.
Okay. So the story is about a train station employee. Is that the story you're thinking about, Lauren, or is it a different story?
I'm just gonna let you go. I'll tell you the end.
Okay. So this guy worked on a train inside of a refrigerator cart inside of the train on a railroad station, and he was working late one night. He didn't realize that it had gotten that late, and all of his coworkers they left for the night, and it was around 11 p.m. Not realizing that he was supposed to clock out about an hour ago, he tries to exit that refrigerator cart, but his coworkers, excuse me, they locked him in. And he's trying to open up that refrigerator cart. He was locked. He's banging on that door and he's locked inside of that refrigerator cart. He knew nobody was going to be around until the next morning. And he was cold and his thoughts started to get the best of him. So he started to panic. He started to really freak out. He didn't know what he was going to do. He thought, I'm going to die in here. So he's actually started to write on the wall and document his journey, his night. And the newspapers actually caught this on their photos. And around 12 a.m., he wrote the words on the wall. I'm freezing. It's 12 a.m. Nobody's going to come for several hours. I think I'm going to die tonight. 1 a.m., he wrote the words, still cold, cannot keep myself warm, temperature keeps dropping. 3 a.m., he writes the words, I'm going to die. I'm freezing to death. I don't know what to do. Okay, so 7 a.m. rolls around. His coworkers clock back in. They open up the refrigerator cart and they look and they see this man dead. He froze to death, hypothermia. What was interesting though, when they investigated the temperature apparatus that this man was looking at, it had been malfunctioning for days and it never dropped below 55 degrees Fahrenheit. His thoughts literally created his own demise. Mm. And if your thoughts can do that, I make the case, if your thoughts can do that, do you think your thoughts could heal you as well? The answer is absolutely yes, it can. We know from Dr. Bruce Lipton that every single thought is a frequency that has the ability to communicate with your DNA nucleus and signal to your DNA nucleus to perform a certain job. And if it's a negative thought, a hateful thought, an angry thought, a bitter thought, the signal sent to your DNA produces inflammatory proteins, which shortens our telomeres and damages the DNA, essentially shortening our lifespan with a single thought. But if it's a grateful thought, a loving thought, an abundant thought, a happy thought, now the signal sent to the DNA produces anti-inflammatory proteins. Your telomeres are protected, your DNA is protected, you extend your lifespan. Well, the average person has 60,000 thoughts every day, according to psychiatrists. And those same studies show that about 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts from yesterday. And 85% of those thoughts are negative thoughts, what Zig Ziglar used to call stinking thinking. I've been saying if you're thinking is thinking, your health is shrinking. So I think this: if we have 60,000 thoughts a day, and your thoughts have the ability to communicate to your DNA nucleus, that means we have 60,000 opportunities every day to put the body in a healing, anti-inflammatory state. And I think that's the greatest biohack that I could ever learn, ever apply, and ever teach. And I go into it even more depth in chapter 10.
That's incredible. 60,000 opportunities a day. That's powerful. That's so powerful. Yeah, I heard a Dick Van Dyke yesterday on some Instagram reel. They were like, what's your secret to longevity, right? He's like killing it. And he's like dancing and laughter.
Ah,
I mean, he dancing and laughter. Like it wasn't like this is what I'm eating or blah blah blah.
yes,
Dancing and laughter.
Not the supplement I'm taking.
right.
The NAD and yeah.
I love
You
it.
can't bottle
Yeah.
that shit. I don't think.
Mindset's so powerful.
No,
Yeah.
you
And
can't. I wish you could.
yeah, and I've heard stories about people that, are diagnosed with some illness and they're given whatever 3 months to live and they die like to the day. And I've always wondered, is that their mind
Wow.
is
Yeah,
Confirming
that's
confirming that?
exactly what is happening. These doctors are, unfortunately, when they're giving this bleak diagnosis, oh, we estimate you have 3 months to live, or that ends up happening because that's what they're expecting, right? And there's also situations where somebody has been diagnosed with certain disease and they die, and then they end up showing that they were misdiagnosed. It's crazy. It's absolutely
Yes.
crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
And then in contrast
Yeah.
with animals, like my vet told me that my dog last fall had like 3 months. That's well past because the dog can't hear those
Wow.
words.
That's right. You
They
can't do
could have
that
just
with
been
them.
completely wrong, but I'm like, he's happy. He's biohacked.
That's
He's getting good
right.
food.
Yeah. He's doing
Yeah.
better.
He's doing better. Yeah.
I'm glad. I want to talk to you more about your dog after we hit record. Let's finish
Yeah.
recording here.
Yeah.
For
The
sure.
whole animal topic.
Yes.
All right. Well, before we let you go, Ben, we want to ask for one final piece of advice. What should our audience start doing today to optimize their health? If it was just one
Get his
thing,
book. Get his book.
other than get the
Yeah.
book. The book is out this week. Get the book. But
Yeah.
one other thing they can do.
Yeah, and I have a special gift for your audience with the book. But before I share that, I'll share the answer here.
Okay.
It is a supplement. It's a supplement, and don't give it away because I know both of you know where I'm getting to here. It's called vitamin G, and there's an entire section in chapter 10 on vitamin G. So vitamin G is anti-inflammatory. It's great for fat burning, great for autoimmune disease, great for getting rid of brain fog. Dr. Joe Dispenza has done brain scans on individuals taking vitamin G, and he saw 1,200 chemical reactions take place instantaneously: oxytocin, GABA, serotonin, dopamine. He's also done, Dr. Joe Dispenza has done vitamin G workshops where he saw the stress hormone cortisol drop and their immune system increase via their IgA levels. UC Davis has studies showing that those who take vitamin G have healthier blood pressure levels, healthier blood sugar levels. I put those studies in the book. This is a new study I put in the book from Harvard that was published in JAMA, probably the most comprehensive study on vitamin G. 49,275 nurses in this study. And it showed that the nurses who took vitamin G every day had a 9% reduction in dying from all-cause mortality versus the nurses who didn't take vitamin G. And they had a 15% reduction in dying from cardiovascular disease versus the nurses who didn't take vitamin G. So, vitamin G, they don't sponsor the podcast. We don't have an affiliate link or a coupon code for vitamin G because vitamin G is the feeling of gratitude. All of those studies are on gratitude. And I was really intentional when I just said the feeling of gratitude, not the practice of gratitude. It's not gratitude. I've learned this over the years. It's not an intellectual practice. It's a feeling. It's an emotional practice. And a lot of left brainers who are more analytical have a hard time with gratitude because they just treat it like a checklist. It's not a checklist, it's a feeling. But when you take vitamin G, you get all those benefits. There's no toxicity limit. It's free. It will rewire your brain. It's a universal law. What you appreciate appreciates. In other words, what you think about, what you think about, you bring about. And I am very grateful for the opportunity to come back on your show. And by the way, the gratitude here I have for you is to let me talk about the book. The book is out this week. Dr. Mindy Pels wrote the foreword, and it's available on hardcover, Audible. I narrated the Audible myself, and also Kindle. And we have a free course with 12 lessons on the metabolism, with exclusive interviews with Dr. Jason Fung, Megan Ramos, Cynthia Thurlow, Dr. Daniel Pompa, and Gary Brecka. These are all interviews only in this course for anybody who orders the book over at metabolicfreedombook.com.
Great.
Wow.
Thank you for that free gift.
I
Thank you.
love that you narrated it. That makes such a difference. It makes such a difference. And the intention you can feel when the author is speaking through their own voice. I'm like, I can't listen to the audibles that are not.
I agree. I have so
like
much
a
respect
robot.
when authors do, but it's a pain in the ass. It's really,
I'm sure it's
a
so much
challenge.
work. So
Yeah.
we are grateful. I'm feeling gratitude for you.
No, I'd rather
Thank you.
come hang out with you for like hours and hours. Like that's so much more fun to hear.
I
from
agree.
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Great.
Oh,
right.
such a pleasure. We should not go this long before we have you back on, but today was awesome. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you so much, Ben.
No,
Anywhere else where we need to tell people where to find you?
Well, no, I just love collaborating with you two. Y'all are amazing rock stars. I always learn from you. It's always so cool seeing you at conferences, and your parents as well, who I love.
Yeah.
It's just cool to build a friendship and relationship with you guys. And thank you for helping me with the book and getting me back on the podcast. And I'm here to support your mission as well. benazadi.com is the main website. You can learn more about me there.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Well, Ben, you're just killing it. Same right back at you. It's been amazing watching your journey over the last, I think, 5 years since we met you. And you're really just changing the world. So we love
As
what
are
you're
you.
doing.
We are in this
Thank you.
together. It's exciting times for us. Let's continue
Yes.
doing what needs to be done. There's a lot of people that need our help.
Definitely.
Yes,
Definitely.
yes. Amen to that.
All
All
right.
right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us today. And thanks to everyone who tuned in. We will see you next time.
Thank you.